I can also assure you that were this a Republican president, a Republican attorney general, and a Republican IRS that were targeting Democrats, I at least would speak out just as vigorously against it. Because if we are going to respect rule of law, the apparatus of the federal government cannot and should not be used as a partisan tool to bludgeon your enemies.
I might have to play that every day. Miles Taylor, that was 2014, Ted Cruz on using the IRS to target enemies.
Yeah, look, someone over at Deadline White House deserves an award for archival footage search. So whoever found that, good on you, team, because that's the type of thing we're going to have to surface again and again is people, regardless of their political position, need to come forward and oppose the principle that the president of the United States, regardless of party, can weaponize the IRS to go after Americans. And as we were talking about just before the break, Nicole, there used to be a lot of safeguards in here to prevent that kind of thing from happening. And Andrew Weissman talked about them a little bit. You've got there's legal safeguards there. There's a whole array of attorneys. There's career civil servants. There's processes. It's a federal crime, not least of which one of the securities is the fact that it's a federal crime for the president to go vindictively order IRS investigations. But the fact that we're talking about how that really important piece, the federal crime for doing it, doesn't matter anymore because we have a president willing to cloak himself in presidential immunity or pardon people is what's really scary. It's what we should focus on here. My question is, and it's a very serious question, what is there now to stop the president of the United States from ordering an IRS investigation into anyone, whether it's a tweet he doesn't like or a news story he doesn't like? And I think the answer is hardly anything.
Yeah, since we've been back on the air, we have received confirmation that former National Security Advisor to Donald Trump, John Bolton, has been indicted. As Andrew and Glenn have pointed out, there are facts still to emerge. It is also a fact that he said of Donald Trump, quote, "I don't think he's fit for office. I don't think he has the competence to carry out the job. There's no guiding principle that I was able to discern other than what's good for Trump's election." He also said about Donald Trump, what he was capable of on a daily basis was doing something more and more outrageous than the day before. John Bolton spent a lot of time on television. He's a prolific writer. He's been in Republican politics for decades. And he made his disapproval and dislike of Donald Trump's temperament and lack of convictions well known. He did not go to the natural extension of that and support his opponent in the 2024 election. He was a policy critic of both President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. He served, though, in the Trump administration at some of the most tumultuous times. He penned a book called The Room Where It Happens. And today, where are we at? October 16th, on the 9th month of Donald Trump's second term, one of Donald Trump's fiercest critics of both his lack of fitness and lack of core values or policy orientation has been indicted. I go to you, Andrew Weissman.
So let's look at the three people who have been charged. What is the message? What is going on here? So what this says to the future Letitia James, the future James Comey, the people who are doing their job, who are trying to bring either civil cases. Letitia James brought a civil case. James Comey referred a criminal matter with lots of factual predication. This is sending a message: don't do it, because in the future, this can be the result. If you don't want to get indicted, put your head down and don't do your job. Now, I think it's particularly significant with respect to now indicting somebody who was an insider. And I think that's the reason that you have this indictment. Again, there may be more to it when we see the charges. But one of the things that it accomplishes by doing this, by attacking Chris Krebs, by attacking Miles Taylor, people who used to be inside, is to say, do not speak sort of ill of Donald Trump. Do not go out and say anything that is derogatory, particularly if you are on the inside. You must be loyal. I think it goes to Glenn's point about seeing three people, the three leaders of the Justice Department, the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, and the FBI Director, standing silent when they have a president doing something that violates sort of all norms and basically using adjectives and adverbs in lieu of facts. And I think that is sort of like the way you can tie this all together in terms of what this president is trying to accomplish and the lasting harm to our country because of the message it sends about what can happen going forward to hold people to account for wrongdoing.
Glenn Thrush, a two-part question. Any new reporting you have that you can add to this? We obviously, part of the benefit of having you here is we get to hear it here as well. But let me just add this to it. I mean, we're talking about the treatment of critics through the prism of the rule of law because Donald Trump has now crossed that Rubicon. And so even an entirely properly predicated investigation and prosecution of a public enemy, and you know, some of the things Bolton said, he was asked on CNN, do you agree with Mark Milley that Trump is a fascist? John Bolton, I don't think he's smart enough to have an ideology, basically too dumb to be a fascist. Well, that question was out there because his top three former generals, Jim Mattis, Mark Milley, and John Kelly, described him as, quote, fascistic to the core. John Kelly said he, quote, meets the technical definition of a dictator. The list of enemies is so long that if we're in month 9 and he's checked off 3, where are we heading?
Oh my God, I don't know. That sounds terrible. No, look, I think the other thing, Nicole, that is extraordinarily interesting here, that I don't think enough attention has been paid to. It's not just about choosing enemies; it's about choosing victims. One of the things that I think you'll notice, and let's talk about what's going on in Chicago and Portland, because in many ways it's just as important and very much tied into what we're experiencing here in Washington and Maryland and Virginia. You're seeing Harmeet Dillon, the head of the Justice Department Civil Rights Division, posting 3 tweets and a video about a right-wing influencer who got into a fist fight with anti-ICE protesters, right? And saying that the department would bring the full force of its investigative power to look if any civil rights violations took place against that individual. By the same token, we just had a judge in Chicago order ICE and Border Patrol to wear body cams because they've been documented, and we've all seen these videos, firing pepper balls at priests, indiscriminate shooting out of tear gas. What we know at this point in time is that ICE has not begun a single internal investigation on any of the behavior of federal officials in any of these instances. The same goes true with the Department of Justice. I've asked them repeatedly. So as we're sort of looking at Trump targeting his enemies, it should also be noted that the department is also cherry picking who they choose to identify as a victim in a crime, and thus far choosing not to investigate or prosecute victims whose politics don't necessarily align with theirs. So this is part of a much larger suite of activity that's about who you choose to prosecute and also who you choose not to investigate.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. As No Kings weekend approaches and millions of people across the country prepare to gather and say no to Donald Trump's authoritarian power grab, his Department of Justice is forging ahead and going after yet another political critic. Longtime ultra-conservative hawk John Bolton, who was Trump's own former national security advisor turned critic, was indicted by a federal grand jury today on 18 counts related to mishandling of national security information. Bolton, of course, the latest target on Trump's de facto political enemies list, to be indicted by his handpicked U.S. attorneys in under a month. Although I have to say the facts of this case look different in some crucial respects than the other ones. This case against Bolton appears to, at least at first glance, have some merit. It wasn't spun entirely out of nothing, unlike the charges Trump demanded against James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. This case against Bolton also has incredible background that reveals the full extent of Trump's weaponization of federal prosecutions, and we've got some exclusive reporting on that background from Carol Leonnig, who we're going to talk to in just a moment. But let's remember the context here. This is the third indictment of a person Trump considers an enemy in just a few weeks. The Trump administration seems intent on pushing as much as they can get away with in as many places as possible, as much as they can, unless and until they meet resistance. And honestly, the question before us day in, day out about what kind of country we will be, what our fate is how much resistance they will meet. That's it. The answer to that is becoming more apparent by the day. A lot. A lot more now than just a few months ago, a lot more than in January. In just the past few days, what we've seen, and we've been trying to keep up with, a growing number of people and groups and institutions who are standing up to Donald Trump and simply saying no. It seems like the harder that MAGA leans into the authoritarianism, the more people are finding the voice to push back. Earlier this month, Trump offered 9 top universities a deal to keep their federal funding in exchange for making their campuses essentially more MAGA. They would become kind of adjuncts of the state. So far, 3 top universities, MIT, Brown, and Penn, have told Trump, no, we will not allow our campuses and our faculties to be held hostage. They all saw how he picked apart Columbia after Columbia's trustees cut a deal. Trump governed like a mafioso running a protection racket. You're intimidated into making a corrupt bargain with him, and you find that the deal keeps getting worse all the time, right? There's no backing out once you say yes. People seem to be realizing the only way to resist is to say no en masse. And again, that is happening more and more every day, everywhere you look. In fact, right now, here's a great story about this. It's happening in a kind of unlikely place. It's happening in airports around the country. So these airports were told by the TSA, they were ordered to air this political propaganda message by the administration. Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem blaming Democrats for the government shutdown.
Hi, I'm Kristi Noem, the United States Secretary of Homeland Security. It is TSA's top priority to make sure that you have the most pleasant and efficient airport experience as possible while we keep you safe. However, Democrats in Congress refuse to fund the federal government, and because of this, many of our operations are impacted.
The chances are that if you're flying anywhere this week, you're not seeing that ad. Administrators at the airport in Portland, Oregon, when Noem's agents are tussling with protesters in frog costumes, pointed out that her ad is just an open violation of the Hatch Act, which is supposed to prevent open politicking by sitting administration officials. It's still the law of the land. Not even airports in South Dakota, where Noem was governor until January, are running the ad. At the state's biggest airport, Sioux Falls Regional, an administrator said, the video is not airing because the airport does not have monitors appropriate for the purpose. He said existing monitors are devoted to flight-related information. Our producers has identified at least 40 airports around the country that are just saying no. They're refusing to air Noem, including all the New York area airports, major hubs in Atlanta, Chicago, LA, and Las Vegas. And we told you earlier this week about resistance to the Trump administration coming from the reporters who cover the Pentagon day in, day out. These are not ideological folks. A lot of these work at, mainstream news outlets. They don't have any sort of bias here, right? They're just trying to do their jobs. And this was them yesterday. This is the scene. It's virtually everyone in the Pentagon press corps, right? Across the sort of spectrum, turned in their access badges, emptied out their workspaces, and vacated the building. Rather than agree to the administration's new restrictions, they were essentially told to act as stenographers. They wanted to keep their access, right? Basically authorized reporting only. And everyone refused, except for the far-right One American News Network. But just them. I mean, Newsmax said no. There was refusal from Fox News, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's former employer. It's also happening in federal grand juries where regular citizens are refusing to indict their peers with charges trumped up by this administration. Like a young woman in D.C. who was accused of assaulting an FBI agent during a protest against immigration officials. Now, the office Trump's handpicked U.S. Attorney, Jeanine Pirro, tried 3 times to indict her on a felony with like serious jail time attached, right? They failed every time. So then they got her indicted on a misdemeanor. And late this evening, listen to this. After a brief trial and less than 2 hours of deliberation, jurors returned a not guilty verdict. These jurors and reporters and airport administrators and university presidents, right, join a Democratic Congress that seems to have found its backbone now 9 months into this, saying no to a president killing healthcare subsidies, illegally impounding funds, creating new funds out of thin air that he's not legally allowed to access. And they join a growing number of judges saying, in no uncertain terms, and again, across the ideological spectrum, appointed by presidents Democrat and Republican, no, you can't put American troops on city streets. You can't have armed agents wearing masks and refusing to identify yourselves and violating people's Fourth Amendment rights, just pulling them over, grabbing them, detaining them. They join thousands of Americans who are monitoring ICE in their neighborhoods, documenting raids, in many cases preventing illegal arrests through just nonviolent witness. All of this is different than those first few months of the administration, right? I mean, then it was like this snowball just rolling down a mountain. It's like so fast, and you saw law firms saying yes and universities saying yes, and everyone kind of not sure what to do. But everywhere you look now, the no's are piling up. They are. And all of those no's are coming as we approach a weekend where millions of people, millions, will take to the streets in thousands of communities across the country as part of the No Kings March. Ezra Levin's the co-founder and co-executive director of Indivisible, one of the key organizers of the No Kings protests. George Conway is a conservative attorney, president of the Society for the Rule of Law, and they both join me now. Ezra, so many people have energy they want to put somewhere right now. And I think so many people also had that same feeling early on of watching institutions they trusted or people they trusted not saying no, saying like, well, yes for now, or maybe, or do you also feel that there is an uptick in this energy to resist, to say no, and that no is a complete sentence and people are understanding that?
Chris, it's been incredible to watch this change. 11 months ago, the conventional wisdom was that Trump was all-powerful. He was rolling in with a trifecta. There was no point in organizing to stop him. That's what we heard from institution after institution, universities, law firms, media institutions. You said it. And look at where we are now. On Saturday, there will be the largest peaceful protest in modern American history. Yeah, we'll be in Chicago. We'll be in New York. We'll be in D.C. We'll be in L.A. But, Gus, we'll be in East Glacier Park in Montana. We'll be in Homer, Alaska, the little town that I grew up in, rural Texas. There are 3 in that county. This is in red states, blue states, purple states, rural areas, suburban areas, urban areas, and it's led by normal, everyday people. I think what we're seeing right now, it's something we've heard a lot, but what we're seeing in real time, in front of our own eyes, is this basic idea: courage is contagious, and it's spreading all over the country right now.
George, I want to. The case of this woman, Sydney Reed, is so remarkable to me, and as a lawyer who's practiced in federal court, you'll appreciate it. I mean, you know, prosecutors can go their whole career and never get a no bill from a grand jury. I mean, it basically is. Right. It essentially is a rubber stamp. It's a little bit of check, a little bit of process, but it's a very easy bar to clear. You got 3 no bills from one grand jury. Then they go down to the misdemeanor, and they're like, "We're going to try you for misdemeanor." She gets acquitted. Here's the statement from Sydney Reed today. "I feel sorry for the prosecutors, really, who must be burdened by Trump's irrational and unfounded hatred for his fellow man. Knowing that I can stand in front of 12 of my fellow citizens and be found not guilty for standing up for basic human rights makes me feel like, despite the scary times we live in, we have hope for the future." And this, to me, is just such a remarkable example of the system holding. In so many places it hasn't, but we've got due process for a reason, and here's what it looks like.
I totally agree with you, and all I want to do is just applaud what you just read. And I think it's absolutely right that courage is contagious. I think that what happens is everybody looks for somebody else to stand up and to defy, the authoritarianism. But once you get enough people doing it, it becomes safe to do it. You become excited about doing it. And I think that's what's going to happen this weekend with the No Kings rally.
Do you feel, Ezra, they've been hammering this message about that, this is a hate America rally, and they've actually been giving it a lot of publicity, which I think is sort of a somewhat strange tactical choice. I want to show what Scott Bessent said about it. Take a listen to his remarks.
I believe that the Democrats will come to their senses soon. Maybe it's after this No Kings thing, but no Kings equal no paychecks. If in fact they are waiting for this No Kings protest, no Kings means no paychecks and no government.
I'm not quite sure the point. What do you make of their tactical decision to highlight these protests as much as they have?
Chris, I want to be 100% clear for everybody watching this. We did not pay one single dime to these Republicans to give us all this publicity. I am thankful, somewhat confused, but they are choosing to highlight it. And what we are seeing is just skyrocketing RSVPs and event registrations. So, my first reaction is I laughed. Do you know how we closed out the Philly No Kings rally in June? Leah, my spouse, and I, we closed it out, 100,000 people waving American flags and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. That's what these rallies look like. They are joyful, they are boisterous, they are patriotic, and anybody with any passing knowledge knows that. And the Republicans feel trapped. They're losing this shutdown fight. They are losing popular support. People are reacting negatively all across the country, and so they're looking for what to do. You'd almost feel sorry for them if they weren't systematically trying to undermine the American Republic.
On Wednesday, President Trump confirmed something that every other administration might have kept shrouded in secrecy, that he had approved new CIA actions inside Venezuela, a move so unprecedented that it prompted a question like that from a reporter. So far, U.S. military strikes on boats in the Caribbean have killed 27 people with little information, evidence, or much of an explanation from the Trump administration on their goals and its war on drug trafficking. But sources tell the New York Times, which was first to report on the CIA's new approvals, that the administration's ultimate goal is to remove Venezuela's leader Nicolas Maduro from power after ending diplomatic talks earlier this month. Joining us now, former Secretary of Defense and former CIA Director Leon Panetta. Regime change. How does that sound to you?
Well, it's always a strange world dealing with the Trump administration. Obviously, the purpose of a covert CIA operation is to keep it highly classified and not to reveal it to anyone so that the mission can be accomplished on a classified basis. The president has announced this covert operation. So it's no longer covert. And the danger is, frankly, that it jeopardizes lives because the mission is no longer covert. Venezuela is going to be very aware of the fact that there are individuals trying to conduct these operations. And it may indeed jeopardize the mission itself. So I'm not sure exactly what the president is trying to accomplish other than to make it apparent that we're not only going to attack Venezuela at sea, we're going to attack them on land as well.
How much of a threat is Venezuela and these cartels to American safety?
Well, there's no question that drug traffickers and those that are involved in the drug trade are a threat, certainly a threat to our country. And we do need to take action to deal with that, but it should be action that is taken within the law. And a lot of what the president is doing is beyond the law. Firing at these vessels at sea, killing a lot of people without presenting any information or intelligence to justify those attacks, that's wrong. And it sends, frankly, the wrong message to the world. And now doing a covert operation that is no longer covert really undermines the ability to accomplish any kind of effective mission that could be achieved. So I just think the administration is doing a lot of this for show and isn't really establishing a strategy to really go after the drug dealers themselves.
Put the legal part of this aside, the serious questions about the legality. What are the risks of doing this?
Well, the risks are that when you're operating in many ways outside the law, that things are going to happen, attacks are going to be made that frankly could escalate. Venezuela now is very aware that they are essentially under attack by the United States of America. And so there's no question that this conflict could escalate into a full-fledged war. And that's the danger, because the president has not laid any groundwork with the Congress. He hasn't really presented to the Congress exactly what the strategy of the administration is. And so a lot of this is being done by the seat of their pants. And ultimately, if you don't have a strategy, if you don't have a clear mission, all of that is going to come back to haunt you.
You can look all around the world, and our attempts at regime change, our destabilization efforts have mixed results at best, mostly bad results. There have been cases where vacuums have been created, terrorism has flourished. Are we potentially going to see? Yeah, are we going to see a version of that happening in Latin or South America because of our efforts?
Yeah, no, it's announcing that somehow we're going to do a covert operation in Venezuela, in many ways sends the worst of all signals to the rest of Latin America. Because what it does is it confirms that the United States is going to use these kinds of covert tactics in order to undermine not just Venezuela, but perhaps other countries as well. I think it sends a bad signal to the other countries that we really need to work with in order to put our arms around the drug cartels and drug trafficking. We need a bond with those countries. We don't need to take them to war.
I want to ask you about the Pentagon and the press corps. They walked out yesterday at 5 o'clock. Didn't sign on to that memorandum, that list of rules given out by Pete Hegseth. I believe there was one signatory that was OAN. So Fox News, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, everyone walked out, New York Times, et cetera, walked out of the Pentagon. What do we lose by not having the press over there?
Look, this is unconstitutional. And I really recommend that Hegseth take the time to read Hugo Black's opinion in the Pentagon Papers. And I'll just read you one line from his opinion. No branch of government, this is a quote, no branch of government can abridge the people's freedom of the press, unquote. That was an opinion that stressed the fact that you cannot interfere with the right of a free press to be able to report the news. Let's not forget, DOD is the largest department in the federal government, almost 300 million people. It spends the largest amount of any department, over $1 trillion. The taxpayers are entitled to know what the hell is going on in the Pentagon. And they do that through the ability of a free press. So, I pay tribute to the institutions that would not accept these constraints. And you know what? Secretary Hegseth can run from a free press, but he can't hide from a free press. Ultimately, these stories are going to come out.
I was also going to mention the reporting around the burn pits and what that has meant for the families of soldiers, not to mention soldiers themselves and their own personal safety. It's a lot that goes into reporting on the Pentagon. Secretary Panetta, thank you so much for joining us, as always. Really good to have you.
Congressional Republicans have hit a new low, now blaming the government shutdown on everyday Americans, saying this weekend's No Kings protests are somehow prolonging the stalemate on Capitol Hill. Now, over the past week, Trump officials and elected Republicans have blasted protesters as Marxists, pro-Hamas, America-hating, and a whole lot worse. But as I write for MSNBC.com, the protesters are not radicals, nor are they a dangerous threat except to those who seek to strangle freedom of speech. They are citizens who refuse to accept authoritarianism as the new normal. Joining us now is Democratic Congressman James Clyburn of the great state of South Carolina.
Congressman, it is so good to have you on. The numbers are supposed to be huge this weekend for this rally, for this protest. This is an administration that is avowedly anti-protest, especially when it is protest of their administration. Do you think they allow these rallies, these gatherings to go on unimpeded?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I certainly hope so. Protest is what this country's always been about. We were born out of a protest. That's what was taking place at the so-called Boston Tea Party. Throughout the entire history of the country, it has been people exercising their First Amendment rights that have brought issues to the forefront. And for people to look at this kind of a protest and say that it's an expression of hate for America, did Rosa Parks hate America? Did Martin Luther King Jr. hate America? Did those of us who struck out along with John Lewis back in 60? Were we hating America, or were we trying to bring to the forefront those things that needed to happen in order for the United States of America to live out its true creed? And so that's all that's going on here. People are expressing their opinion about this administration, and just because it's not complimentary, they see it as hate, or shall we say terrorism. It's just crazy.
It is also wild, Jackie, to hear Republicans smear Americans who want to protest as being Marxist, as being pro-Hamas, when all they are is anti this administration. Your question.
I personally have sort of struggled to make the connection that Republicans are trying to make right now between the protests and the shutdown. But on the topic of this shutdown, Congressman, John Thune, Majority Leader, went on MSNBC this morning with our ally Vitali and basically offered Democrats a vote on extending Obamacare subsidies. That would happen so long as Democrats agreed to open the government. Is this an agreement that House Democrats will go with and agree to?
Well, everything has to be looked at with the particulars. We always say that the devil is in the details. To cast off an expression, I was up this morning. I don't know why I got up that early, and I saw him in real time. And I am appreciative that it was repeated in the first part of Morning Joe, because I wanted people to see that whole thing. This is not about just one issue. This is about health care. When you're cutting all of the money or significant portions of the money out of Medicaid, and when you put Medicare under threat, and then when you do not allow the tax credits that come along with the Affordable Care Act that makes it affordable, then it's more than just one issue. And so just to say you're going to allow a vote to take place if we stop protesting, then that's a problem for me. So we're not going to give up our rights to bring to the American people exactly what the issues are involved here and what has come about because of this so-called, what I call big ugly bill. That is something we're going to keep before the American people, and we're not going to give that up on a promise of a vote.
There you go. because I'm telling you, if you think that, okay, we're going to give you the necessary votes to open the government, and then on the back end, we guarantee that we're going to have a vote on the things you want, Democrats. Okay, y'all are stupid if you buy that one, because I can tell you that's not how this is going to play out. And it's good to hear you say that, Congressman. And it begs the question for me on a broader scale about the rising level of resistance relative to what we're about to see this weekend, and what that is saying. And more importantly, the reaction of Republicans to it. Talk a little bit about what you think the American people are finally beginning to signal to this administration. Yes, you had the No Kings vote, the No Kings rallies a few months ago, but this one feels different. This one seems to settle differently with the American people. What are you picking up in South Carolina? How are Republicans even in your state looking at this administration and what these protests may actually be saying?
I think people are beginning to see exactly what is going on here. You know, it's one thing for people to express even alternative facts, but it's something else when you begin to lay out an autocracy. People are beginning to see that this administration is not about fairness. That's what they fear. They fear fairness. They fear freedom. You know, they fear, when I say that, Michael, I sometimes rely on my biblical background. What's that? The book of John, I think it was John, that we find, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And that's what they fear, the truth. They fear the facts. And the facts are beginning to get through to the American people that this is not about anything but making your lives more miserable. We have price points coming out of this. We have pain points coming out of this. And when people see what it's going to cost for them to get the kind of health care that they've been getting for the last several years. We have one couple here in South Carolina that's gotten a number that goes from around $50 a month to over $2,000 if this goes away.
Yeah, no, people are talking about those premiums, and your colleagues who are going home are hearing about those premiums. I do have to ask you really quick before we have to go, Congressman, just in the last hour, there was this op-ed by Representative Ralph Norman, who, of course, is running for governor in your state in a very crowded Republican field. Trump should lean on South Carolina to eliminate Jim Clyburn's district. What would you like to say to Representative Norman?
Well, I understand that Ralph Norman's father left him a little bit of wealth. I wish he had left him a little bit of gray matter. I think that Ralph is always looking for attention. The fact of the matter is, South Carolina has 7 congresspeople, and only one of them is a Democrat. The Democrats carry about 45% of the vote in every election here. So why is it that Democrats are not fairly represented in our congressional delegation? We are about 28% African American in South Carolina, yet with 1 out of 7, it means that we only 14% of the representation. They fear fairness. Ralph Norman did not have the capacity to exist with fairness. He wants the whole game to be rigged in his favor, and that way he feels he can be successful. If he were so sure of himself, why not have fairness in the process? He wants the president to lean on the South Carolina legislature to take fairness out of the process and rig it in favor of his candidacy for governor. Ain't gonna happen.